Okay, well, welcome. My name's Jack Lee. I am the president and CEO of KMSI, and with me today is AJ Evanish on camera. He is the project engineer and manager of our KMX Live virtual classroom product. Also in the room with me today is Kira Leibson. She is one of the technical support specialists and content developers and managers in our content department, who does a lot of the nice graphics that we put together for some of our presentations, and she's also quite a wizard with our KMX Live product. So I've got some good support here with me today. If you have questions or need support, raise your hand, and AJ will do his best to work through any issues with you, and that would include turning on your micro camera. Again, a reminder, we are recording today, so anything you say on mic or do on camera, if you elect to have those turned on, will end up in the ultimate recording. The hand raise icon is in the lower right-hand side of the screen, and the private chat icon, and AJ gets to answering your question, will kind of flash up in the upper left-hand side of your screen. And off we go. So today's discussion is supporting student learning styles in a virtual classroom environment. I've been in the training business longer than I care to admit, and I've taught and instructed both virtual and classroom and hybrid learning courses for literally thousands and thousands of students over the years. And it's certainly obvious to me that there are different learning styles, and while some of these things can be debated and there may be subsets to each of these learning styles, I think it's important to at least recognize, and I think a lot of you that are experienced instructors, professors, and teachers have already run into this, and trying to make sure that your students, that your participants are able to comprehend the information that you're putting out and actually retain it after the class is over. So let's talk a little bit about what these learning styles are. The most prominent learning style, and nobody's just one, everybody has a combination of all three, but the most prominent are your visual learners. And these are the people that are the shiny object people. They're easily distracted visually. So if you've got something on the screen, or if something is going on in their personal environment, or in a virtual classroom or a regular classroom session, they're going to be the ones that get distracted by sight. They learn best when they can see the material being taught. They also like to see demonstrations of information, not because it's good for them, it's because that's how they retain the information. And I'm sure you've all run into people that can remember a face but can't remember a name, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But again, these visual learners are typically the ones that prefer images, maps, graphs, and anything visual to help them crystallize the information that you're presenting in their memory. So that's your visual learners. The next group that we're going to talk about are your auditory learners. Okay, your auditory learners. Have you ever had somebody that wanted to repeat things back to you? Well, you would tell them something, you would, say, give them information, and they would want to say it themselves. Well, that's an auditory learner. They not only like to get a chance to talk, but they also like to repeat what you said, not just to confirm that they understood it, but by hearing themselves say it, they actually retain it better. So they learn most efficiently through hearing and listening. They retain information when it's delivered through sound or speech rather than written form, and it can be other than just speech. The sound of machinery, the sound of an object, the sound of an alarm. I remember when we were on the submarine, they would make sure that we understood each of the sounds of the alarms, and then they would have us mimic those sounds just to make sure that we understood what a collision alarm sounded like, what a diving alarm sounded like, what that battle station sounded like. These are the things that auditory learners definitely need. Again, they're also easily distracted, but not by the shiny object. They're distracted by sound. So the ringing phone, the barking dog, the instructor that drops his keys, these are the things that not only distract the learner, but they break the learner's concentration. And once broken, it's very hard to get them back. I mean, you might just assume, okay, well, the dog quit barking, we're all back on track. But those auditory learners, they got to back up a few steps to catch back into the theme of what it is you're trying to put out. The last group of learners, and again, there are subgroups and we can talk about those, but let's deal with the primary ones first, are your tactile learners. They learn by touching and doing. I'm sure any of you who've taught a class have had the fidget widget in your class. The person that just can't sit still, they're constantly bouncing around, they've got something in their hand, the fidget widgets. Those are your tactile learners. They learn while moving. Okay, I've seen this over and over and over again in classes that I've taught both at the university level and in the corporate level. They learn, when they're moving, and I don't know all the mechanics behind it, but they also need to touch and do things, and they learn much better when they have something to do. And if that something to do actually has something to do with what you're trying to convey with the information in your course or your class, well, all the better. Okay, so they'll build stuff, they'll do stuff, they like to draw, but there has to be some physical activity involved. Now, somebody told me the other day when I was preparing my slides for this presentation that, well, our students get to take notes, so that covers the tactile learning. Not really. Okay, okay, note taking is a physical movement, and expecting note taking, I guess a professor can say, why aren't you taking notes, Sammy? But in the end game, these learners actually want to be involved and engaged with the information, and they need to have some physical activity that associates the information that you're trying to put out to the actions that they have to do with their hands or through physical activity. So it's always good to engage all three learner styles early in your presentation. Sorry, I had my COVID booster yesterday. My throat's a little dry. So in the upper right-hand corner of my slides, if you see the little touch icon that is up there right now, that means that we're about to do something as a class. And what we're going to do here is we're going to try and engage all three learning styles of everybody in the group. And we're going to do this with Simon Says game. Now, this is going to be really short and sweet. And in a few seconds, you're going to see an elevator, come up on your screen that looks like the one on the slide I just showed you. And you'll be able to actually control that. Don't do anything until I say Simon Says. Now, on my screen, I see what you're touching. I can see what you're doing. It doesn't matter how big the class is. I could have 500 people in here, and I could still know which one of you is following instructions and which one of you jumped ahead and already pushed a button. And we won't talk about who's already done that in this class because it's already happened. The object of Simon Says is don't do anything unless I say Simon Says before I say what to do. So in this case, what I'm going to ask you to do is Simon Says press the up button. Okay, so I'm seeing which students are actually able to comply with those instructions and press the up button. Simon Says press the stop button. Press the down button. Caught some of you. Okay, so now you kind of understand how visual activity within here. Anybody who pressed the down button didn't wait for me to say Simon Says. And we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people that did that. So don't feel bad if you were one of them. You probably didn't know the rules of Simon Said. I'm going to go ahead and reset that conveyor simulation. The whole object of that was to show you that it is possible to engage your students on all three levels with something very simple. Now, obviously, you're not going to be playing Simon Says in your higher education, classes, most likely. If you are, well, I want to take that class because that sounds like a lot of fun. But at the same time, it's important to know that it definitely is possible to engage people in a virtual classroom with physical activity, visual activity, be able to see motion, be able to touch things, control things, and listen to the instructor provide instructions that would allow them to actually retain the information better. So let's go ahead and move on here. What's the practical application of all this? Well, it's retaining the information. It's getting the information across, having your students comprehend what you're putting out, be able to actually use that information and apply that information are the things that you gain when you implement the three learning styles. So unless somebody is impaired, vision impaired or hearing impaired, most students perform best with a blend of all three primary learning styles. Now, the majority of people's primary style, is visual. After that, audio, and after that, tactile, as you see in the graph in front of you. But what's important to note is that everybody has all three. Everybody, unless, again, impaired, has the need to, see things. If somebody just gave you a picture book presentation and there was no narration, there was nobody talking, there was no professor or instructor or teacher, providing context to the visuals, well, that'd be kind of a useless class. So you can understand how visual and audio go together. But again, unless students see it, okay, a great majority of students have a hard time comprehending things from an audio book. Now you combine that audio book with some visuals, and now you've really got something. You combine that audio with the visuals and the ability for the participant to do something. Now you've really got a training program that has some teeth. So your tactile learners had the most difficulty with a lecture style presentation. So if all I was going to do today was talk, wave my hands around, point to AJ or Kira or whatever, and there was no actions for you to do, those tactile learners would have a difficult time learning during this presentation. The other thing you got to realize is the auditory learners need that controlled sound environment. I have all of you muted by default. I gave you the option to come on to the audio, come on to the video if you wanted. But when we get to the things where I need to control the sound environment, I would have hit the mute button across the board and muted everybody so that the auditory learners didn't get distracted during that part of the presentation. So the last thing I want to point out is some organizations have gone so far as to say, well, we're going to have courses and classes for auditory learners. We're going to have them for visual learners. We're going to have them for our tactile learners. And that's really counterproductive, okay? Because there's really no such thing as a visual only, auditory only, tactile only learner. Everybody's all three. It's understanding the representative blend, and it's also understanding how expensive and counterproductive it would be to try and isolate down to one of those three and have three different versions of all of the courseware or information that you're putting out. Okay, so we've been talking for a little while. It is now time to check learner comprehension, and you need to do this early and often for all three learning styles. Because if you don't have engagement of the users, or you're not letting them talk, or you don't have a free-for-all, Zoom meeting going, there's got to be some way for not only the presenter, the instructor, me to know that you're actually paying attention, but at the same time, it's also important for you to know that you're getting the information being provided and that you're understanding that information. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to put out a short quiz. I think this has only got 3 questions on it. Let me give you a few seconds, to complete that quiz. Now, I will tell you that this does affect your score. If for some reason you toggle your display to the point where you've toggled off of the quiz, there's a button on the bottom of the screen that says toggle display to allow you to toggle between the slides and any active content that I may have on the screen. Sometimes I forget to point that out, and students are clicking all over the screen playing with stuff. Okay, just about everybody's done here. I just wanted to get something out early, just to give you an idea of how to get the engagement of your learners. And again, there's nothing really visual here. Okay, looking at me and AJ isn't selling anything. It just isn't. Okay, and the test questions, okay, they're pretty little blocks and they highlight different colors when you click them, but that's not visual learning. Okay, so we've gotten audio a little bit. But what we've really done is check your comprehension and make sure, and by the way, this is scored and it'll go in your grade for the class. I'm going to go ahead and reset now that everybody's completed that, well, almost everybody. And we'll move on here a little bit. Okay, so let's look at some examples out there. During the pandemic, especially during the pandemic. A lot of organizations raced to get virtual learning, going, and they didn't have a virtual classroom technology. They may not have ever used a virtual classroom technology and didn't even know where to look. So they went to their IT department, or somebody smart in their organization that knew how to use Zoom, WebEx, or GoToMeeting, or FaceTime, or whatever, and ended up putting up a virtual meeting room as a classroom, as a supplement for the classroom. Well, these things didn't work so great. All the surveys that have come back, all the research that's come back has been pretty bad on this type of approach, because in this kind of approach, the visuals are really unrelated to the subject matter and distracting when you got 30, 40, 50 cameras on the screen. I saw a presentation class the other day, and the person talking, became the big video, okay, and all the other little videos got smaller. I couldn't I'm a visual learner. I could not concentrate at all. I'm just watching these bouncing blocks of, Sammy talks, Susie talks, Stevie talks, Sally talks, and the videos getting bigger, getting smaller. It's like, oh my goodness gracious, that is distracting for a visual learner. So visuals that are unrelated to the subject matter are distracting. They shouldn't be on the screen. You should put on the screen what's important for the students to see, what they're going to get something from. The audio, I mean, my hand gestures is probably the best thing you're going to get out of this class today, because I love my hand gestures. The audio from multiple participants is also very distracting. Even if they're not saying anything, the fact that they drop their pen, they drop their keys, their dog barks, the Amazon delivery comes, whatever, that audio is very distracting and should be eliminated from any kind of a training environment to support the audio learning style users. And again, no tactile activity. There's nothing for the students to do. So, this kind of gets the strike 1, 2, and 3 approach. Another one that, was rolled out a lot during the pandemic, and primarily by the big telecom companies, were virtual classrooms that looked kind of like this. We had a wide angle camera on the instructor or the teacher, and then little vignette cameras, webcams showing up for all the students, right, that are in the K-12 classroom. Okay, well, I think you can see that those visuals are a little difficult to see, even for a young kid that's got 20 vision. That's a hard thing to keep track of for anybody. So this kind of approach really doesn't solve the visual problem, and it may even make it worse. The audio, again, from multiple participants can be an issue, especially with kids. And again, no tactile activity, and note taking doesn't count. I mean, it just doesn't count. Maybe having the students bounce in their seats, would be better than saying taking notes is how you're going to learn for a tactile learner. The last, the second to last one I want to show you is this higher education model that's out there. And I mean, this really got some legs, especially during the pandemic, where a professor would go into a huge studio. They've got zillion cameras of their 150 students. And the university thinks, oh, we're making bank off of this. We got 150 students in the room. We got one professor teaching the class. It's going to get recorded, as a YouTube video, and la 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 la. Well, those visuals again are unrelated to the subject matter. Even if the instructor holds something up or demonstrates something or puts it on the physical whiteboard, it's still difficult for the visual learners to engage in a class like this. The audio, again, can be very distracting if you allow these, if you're going to have the webcams on and you don't have the audio on. I'm not really sure exactly what the point there is, and then again, you don't have the tactile activity. There's nothing for the students to do. You can say, well, they do a lot of Q&A in these classes, and that, that's tactile activity. No, it's not. Tactile activity involves physical movement, and that doesn't include just movement of the mouth. That means engaging the learner, engaging the user in the learning process, and that isn't answering questions in a Q&A process. So again, this doesn't work very well for those three types of learning styles. Now you look at the corporate version, And it's the oldest of the versions that are out there. Corporations have been doing this long before universities got, moving on this. I remember working on the Ford Star system and the General Motors distance learning networks back in the 80s, using satellites to accomplish this stuff. The visuals in most corporate learning, courses tend to be boring, but they don't have 30 video cameras on the screen or webcams on the screen. They have an instructor. They call them the talking head presentations. The audio is constrained to the necessary participants. It isn't a free-for-all. But the bad news is there's nothing for the students to do. There's no tactile activity, and the chat room doesn't count. Okay, the chat room isn't tactile activity associated with the learning. So let's go look over what the most common virtual classroom mistakes are, and then we're going to get into some fun stuff. We're actually going to do what it is I've been talking about for the last couple of minutes. So the webcams flipping on and off based on who's talking at the time is a huge visual distraction for learners. And the instructors really need to control the visuals for their class and put something in front of the class that help the students follow along. A map, a picture, a visual, a list of bullets, whatever it is, it should support the learning and not be distracting to the students. Showing the student webcams during a presentation and demonstration lesson is just visually distracting. Save that for the Q&A sessions. It's great for Q&A session, absolutely great. You want to do a poll, it's great, but that's not really good during the presentation segments. Display icons and buttons that don't enhance the learner experience. And boy, have I seen a bunch come out lately where, you've got your little webcam and you've got 5 little indicators underneath it, and everybody's paying attention to the 5 little indicators and they're not paying attention to you, the instructor. Those don't solve anything. Get them off the screen. Unmuted student microphones, we've already talked about, cause distractions. Poor visual presentation materials like the chalkboard that we saw in the K-12 example, or whiteboards without the use of a basic image, even whiteboards that are electronic. I could bring up a whiteboard right now and we could have a free-for-all sharing information. I always like to put a background image up there so I constrain the subject and what we're talking about to at least the point that I'm trying to discuss. So background images are a great way to, to keep the visual experience alive, when using the whiteboard. And the last thing is dense, high resolution images and screen shares. Devices, we have several students in here today that are using tablets, laptops, and we've got a handful of mobile users in here, that are using their cell phones. I can see a couple of cell phone users in here. The system tells me all that. So you don't want a dense display or something that's so hard to see that a person can't, use the device that they're, intending to use for the training to actually see what's being presented. So the point of all this is a little effort goes a long way. You want to make your presentations visually appealing. Now, you may not like my selection of colors or the background image, but I did the best I could in the time I had to try and make it visually appealing. You want to leverage media elements that support all 3 primary learning styles. We already did one with our little conveyor exercise. We're going to do 2 more, 3 more here in a second. You want to include tactile media. That means stuff that students engage in and do and touch. Like the conveyor, you got to touch the buttons. Interactive lesson segments, simulations, and the one that really works great, really great, are games. Okay, we'll do one game here today just to make sure you understand that this is easily doable in a virtual classroom environment if you have a virtual classroom and not a virtual meeting room. So the first one we're going to do is just a student activity, okay? This is a short little activity, and it'll give you the idea of what you could do in about 10 minutes of development time if you had a real virtual classroom technology that you were working with to get some interactivity out of your users. And again, the system's going to tell me where you're at and how you're doing. This is a scored exercise and it's weighted towards your final grade. Now for this group, it's meant to be a little bit of fun. Hopefully the questions aren't that difficult. I pulled it out of 4 or 5 different junior high school lectures. And one of them was off of Hollywood Today, I think, or some magazine. So Go ahead and give this a crack. See if you can get through it and pass it. You have a couple of students that are doing extraordinarily well here. You've got a couple of students that took a left turn. And at the end, you'll get to the last slide and it'll give you the opportunity to know your score and your time when you get there. Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people that have already completed it. I'll give you just a few more seconds. I see a couple of people aren't participating. I won't call you out by name, but I know who you are. And again, this was meant to be fun and get you to engage in the class. It's give you an opportunity to do something if you're one of those tactile learners. Okay, with that, we're going to go ahead and reset back to the slides. I'm sorry about the European cultural issues. I didn't think about that. You are absolutely right, Miriam. You are absolutely right. Anyway, most of you did good. I do apologize for not considering the cultural issues in some of those questions, but I hope you all like the one with the Taj Mahal and the Australian. I got one in there that was at least culturally appropriate. So we'll go ahead and move on here to our next activity. And this next activity is a little complex. A lot of people say you can't teach skills or you can't deliver skills training in a virtual classroom. Well, yes, you can. We've got equipment simulators that work in our virtual classroom. We've got screen, computer screen operations, where you're actually having to, type and do stuff that, mimics an actual process, customer support process, a development process, something like that. They've all been developed with the product that comes with our system called KMX Author, which AJ did a wonderful course on a few weeks ago. It's already gotten 500 completions, which I was just astounded. People really love that course. And this one that we're going to do here was also developed with that KMX Author tool. And there's two components to it. First, we're going to teach you a little bit about the piano with the piano simulator. And then we're going to give you a chance to play the orchestra piano. Okay. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and push out the teach part, and we're going to try and learn a little bit about music. And the lower key on your keyboard, the very far left one, is C. And the very highest key is upper B. Okay, so you've got 2 octaves of keyboard on your keyboard to play with. And go ahead and punch a few keys, and you'll see when you punch a key, it'll tell you what key you pressed. Now, all you have to know is which are the lower half and which are the upper half, okay? Because the lower half are the ones on the far left, and the upper half are the ones on the far right, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple of notes into the chat room, the public chat room. Hopefully you have that on. And if you can find these notes on the keyboard, you should be able to play the tune, or at least the first part of the tune. If you toggle your display back, you'll be able to see the slide of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, because those are the first, 11 notes of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Judy Garland was one of my favorites. I'm old. Give me a break. And we'll see if I'm watching you. I can see what keys you're pressing. And I know if you're actually trying or if you're just letting time go by. I could remediate right now if this was a class that really needed to learn how to play Somewhere Over the Rainbow. I'm going to let that go for those of you who aren't pressing keys. But I just want you to get the feel of the keyboard, know where the keys are. And it's not really that hard. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, etc. I mean, it's the alphabet. Okay, none of these are sharps or flats in this song. The sharps and flats are obviously the black keys. So again, I'm just giving you a chance to play with the keyboard before we bring the orchestra version of the keyboard onto the screen. So now that everybody's had a chance to goof around a little bit and give their Somewhere Over the Rainbow, lower C, upper C, lower B, lower G, a shot, now we're going to bring up the orchestra keyboard. And this one will actually play chords. This one is, again, 2 octaves. It's exactly the same as the one we just had, but it's not in teaching mode anymore. This is a real piano simulator, and we can go full 88 keys. The only problem is most screens have a problem with that. If you have a touch screen, this will work if you want to play some chords, on it. And again, you can play a song. Oops. You get the idea. So you can teach skills. Now, obviously, I haven't taught you any skills today, but I think you can see how easy it would be. And these are fully editable. Again, this was developed with our KMX Alpha product, which is free, which is included with our KMX Live product as well. So, just trying to give you an idea that, yeah, it is doable. And, if you want to see any of the mechanical simulations or equipment operation simulations or things like that, that's AJ's bailiwick. He knows that stuff cold. Just send him a private message, in the chat room, and he'll set you up, because he knows how to do simulations. That's his team that does almost all of our simulation work for our clients. And you don't need us to do it. We give you the tools to do it if you want to do it yourself, and they're free. They're absolutely free. We don't charge for any of these tools that develop these content elements. So now that you've played a little bit with the actual concert version of this, we're going to reset. And again, I'm trying to show you how to support learning styles in a virtual classroom environment. You had visual, you had audio, you had tactile in all of the last 2 examples that we went through. Every learning style need was met. And if it was relevant to the subject matter that we were trying to put out, and in this case, it thankfully is, then it should have helped you retain the information that was being presented. So now let's move on. I think this is the last one today. Yes, it is. This is the last example we're going to do today. I told you earlier I thought games were an excellent way to engage students and measure student comprehension, and get people to engage in a class. This little game was developed with KMX Games. It's part of our KMX Live suite as well. You can you get it with that. It's a game engine. It has lots of different interfaces, and the interfaces are modifiable, that mimic game shows that you've probably seen on TV. This one is Who Wants to Be Rich interface, and you'll listen to the video, and then you're going to get tested on the information that I've put out already. I think it's 4, 5, 6 questions, something like that, and it will score, and it will produce a leaderboard for our entire class. So if you were paying attention, you should be able to get to the top of the leaderboard. If you weren't paying attention, well, guess where you're going to be on the leaderboard? You're going to be at the bottom. So this is a way to engage your students. This is 60% of your weighted score for this event today. And hopefully everybody has a good time playing it. I'm going to go ahead and let it run through all the way, since it is only 5 questions.
Are you ready to take your chances in the hot seat? If so, you will be presented with a question and multiple choice answers. Answer correctly and you'll earn prize points while moving on to the next question. Answer incorrectly and your time in the hot seat is finished. If you are stuck on a question, you have 2 lifelines to help you progress, but don't take too long. The winner will be determined by the most prize points and best time. Are you ready? Let's play Who Wants to Be Rich? Your answer is correct. I think you should select the answers highlighted in green. Your answer is correct.
Don't forget to use your lifelines.
Your choices have been narrowed down to the items highlighted in orange. Your answer is correct. Your answer is incorrect. Your answer is correct. Let's see how you did.
Okay, so we're done. And you should have the leaderboard on the screen, and we see that we've got some real winners here. We've got a couple of people that got all the way to the $1 million level. Really excited for you, but I'm sorry, it's not real money. This is Monopoly money that we're playing with here today. And again, I just trying to give you an idea of what you can do in a classroom environment to engage your students, promote a little competition. Maybe you want to give away real prizes. I'm going to go ahead and reset this, and we'll bring everybody back to the class. Okay, so we're almost done with the course. Just about everybody has passed today. We had a low passing threshold. We got a couple of people that have done extraordinarily well with scores near 100. I have an instructor dashboard in front of me. I know which one of you are paying attention, and it's almost everybody is paying 100% attention. We've got a couple of people that have drifted off and are, checking their Facebook profile or doing things like that. The system is reporting your attention factors to me. I know where you have scored on every single exam. I can bring up your grade book. I know where you're coming in from. I know what location you're at. And I know your status. So there's a lot of information being provided to me as an instructor. So I know that what I'm doing is working. The last thing you want to do as an instructor is find out that everybody's going to fail after the class is over. If you've got a problem, remediate early, deal with it early. And that's what these dashboards give me the opportunity to do. And I can see that while you're doing things, and I can see a summary of what you've done when you're not doing things. And that's an important thing to have in any virtual classroom environment. So you can track engagement, attention, completion, status, location, et cetera, score. All these things are important to an instructor. They would expect to have that in a physical classroom. There's no reason not to give it to them in a virtual classroom. And the one benefit that the students get out of it is they don't get to drift off. I know exactly who has drifted off, and I could remediate you privately, or I can embarrass you publicly if I really wanted to, but I won't do either of that right now. We're going to go ahead and move on to our summary and Q&A session. Okay, if you want to come on camera, we will be ending the recording here in just a second. Let me cover this summary and Q&A, and then if you want to come on camera or you just want to ask some questions in the chat room, that'll be great. The summary that I'd like to at least put out is that the visual learners need something to see. They need something that illustrates the information being presented, not just something to look at, because they are shiny object people, but something that's relevant to the training, the education, the material that's being presented. It has to be clear, focused, and legible in order for them not to be distracted. You've really done a negative. You've given something they can't read, they can't see, that's unworkable for them. The visual learners, any display unrelated to the lesson is going to knock them off track, and it'll take them a while to get back. Your auditory learners need that controlled sound environment. We talked about the dropping keys, the dropping pen. It isn't just that it takes them off for a second. That crisp presentation audio without distraction keeps them engaged and keeps you from having to back up and start over to re-get the auditory learners back into the subject that you're trying to put out and the information that you're trying to get them to retain. Your tactile learners, they're the ones that can't sit still. They're fidget widgets. They bounce around. They play with their pens. They're normally the class clowns. In school, you'll see that your tactile learners. They're normally your class clowns. And they don't retain information, and they will draw attention to themselves unless you give them something to do. You got 30 webcams on a screen and you got a fidget widget in the classroom and you don't have anything tactile from there to do, they're going to be embarrassing. They are. They tend to be the ones that tend to be the class clowns. Put up the sign that says I don't understand, or this class isn't any good, or whatever. I mean, those are your fidget widgets. So you got to take care of those tactile learners. If you're going to do a write-in poll or enable students to do a whiteboard, it's the tactile learners that'll use those activities to draw attention to themselves. So keep them active during the session, and you can avoid all that. Don't keep them active, and you might be surprised at some of the silly things these people will do in your chat rooms, or some of the silly things that they'll do during your polls. Learners are generally a blend of all three primary learning styles, and the items above affect each of them to some degree. Now, I hope you've enjoyed today's presentation as much as I've enjoyed putting it out. I'm sure AJ enjoyed answering all your questions today as we went through. I could have put all your cameras on the screen. We can put 50 on the screen at a time. I don't like to do that. I don't like to distract you with all the visuals. I could have had all your microphones on the whole time. Again, there would be audio distractions had we done that. But now I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. And if you want to play around or talk or engage with us, that will be great. So with that, thank you for attending today. And I'm ending the recording now.